So if you've got to a grade 8 standard of playing, or you've passed your grade 8, first of all, congratulations, well done. It's no small feat. That's a lot of years of dedication and practice. And you might be wondering, okay, what's next? So I'm going to start with a series of videos giving you some suggestions of what might be a good next step, or what might be good next steps, because there's such a vast amount of repertoire out there that it sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming and you're not quite sure where to start. We have all these huge works we want to learn and dip into, but are we ready yet? Which ones are the bigger ones? You may not know. So in this video, I'm going to give you a few little tips on what you might try next. There's going to be a series of videos and we're going to dip into all kinds of genres, which is going to be hopefully really interesting. So what do we need to develop next? Well, we need to develop our musical independence. We need to develop our own voice a bit more. You may now be working without a teacher, or just seeing a teacher occasionally, or just going on courses occasionally. So you may well be working a lot more independently. We need to develop stylistic understanding in a lot greater depth than perhaps we have done so far. So what was the music of the era? Why was it that music? You know, was it to do with the development of the piano? Was it to do with what was going on in the world of the arts and literature? Was it to do with wars, politics? Was it to do with all of it? And you'll have different answers for different composers and different genres and different eras, which is really fascinating, really fascinating. And I would urge you to look into that as well, research around it. It just makes what you're doing speak to you more, because you almost can put yourself in that time, in that era, if you have this knowledge of what was going on, what was influencing these composers. Is it nature? You know, is it a love story? There's so many things, so many different influences. So for today's video, I'm just going to give you a few tips for what you would do next with Bach. You might well have done J.S. Bach, this is. You may well have done a Prelude and Fugue. You might have done one for a grade 8 exam if you've done grade 8. What's a good one to do next? C minor is a really good one. Things you'll learn. Technical fluency. There's little better than Bach for developing technical fluency. Harmonic awareness. We call Bach the godfather of harmony for really obvious reasons. And if you did A-level music like I did, you would have been made to write out lots of music in the style of Bach chorales. And this is where you learn so much about harmony. Structural awareness. You know, we need to learn a bit more now about form and structure to understand how the composers put their music together. And again, it just makes it so much more interesting. You'll find if you have this understanding, you will eventually play and perform your pieces so much better, because you'll be able to tell the story of whatever that composer was intending when he wrote that music. Because we almost have to have, almost like an actor, we have to sort of inhabit that time, if you like, a little bit when we are performing. So things we're going to, just to recap what I've said about what we might learn from these various suggestions that I'm making today. Stylistic understanding, technical fluency, harmonic awareness, even more finger independence, structural awareness, tone production, colour, voicing, musical imagination, and yes, even in Bach, musical imagination. People have a very big misconception about Bach, particularly, you know, when people are younger. I find Bach is an acquired taste, and I fell in love with Bach as I got older. When I was younger, I didn't really fully understand or appreciate it, but now it's just such wonderful music to learn, to understand and to play. So can you have artistic independence in a prelude and fugue? Yes, you can. If you think about how you learn a fugue, for example, you've got your 4 voices, and you really want to be learning that in voices, by the way, not hands separately. We need to move away from that. We have to understand the counterpoint, the polyphony, the different subjects and themes on where the first subject is. We need to understand fugue. So form and fugue here is really important. And a great way to do that is take photocopies, 4 photocopies of your book, of your fugue in your score, and get highlighting pens. You can even have 5. So different colour for each voice, and will help you with practicing. And then you could even then have the 5th copy, because you would not want to do this in your lovely score. And in that 5th copy, you would have all the different colours, and you can see how they interweave. It's really fascinating. And there are decisions you can make there, because if you listen to various people who are very well known for playing Bach, they will all voice slightly differently. So although we may not have the freedom of rubato like we do in the Romantic era, we have got quite a strict set of criteria, if you like. But where you have got that musical and artistic freedom is, do you think that voice there in the tenor is a little bit interesting and you want to bring that out? You want to give that a bit of colour, you want to let it have its moment. Obviously we know in a fugue the subject is going to lead, but you know, where's the other colours, where's the texture that you want your audience to hear more? Is it the alto, is it the tenor? You know, is it in the soprano when the soprano doesn't have the first subject? So understanding all of this is a great next step if you haven't already done so. I have a shelf full of Bach, and we will talk more about what then comes after this, but this is a great place to start post grade 8. The Inventions and the Sinfonias, and a slightly trickier prelude and fugue than you've done so far, or if you haven't done one, please do one. I do particularly like the F minor. I don't know if it's because many years ago I did that for a diploma, and it just stayed with me, and I do love a minor key. I like it's quite melancholy, it's quite dark, and I like that in music. Not all music, but in my Bach, I quite like that. I like something deep. So I hope those suggestions are really helpful. Who to listen around, because always listen around what you're playing as well. Don't just listen to piano music, listen to strings. Obviously go and listen to some harpsichord music. If you can get to a harpsichord concert, even better. If you can go and try a harpsichord. So many people don't know about Handel and Hendrik's house. I think it's in Brook Street. I think I'm right in saying it's in Brook Street. I haven't been for a few years. You can go and try the harpsichords there. You need to find out what the program is, if there's any tours and things. But you can actually go in, and this is a blue plaque building where Bach once lived or stayed, and then later on Jimi Hendrix also lived and stayed there. So we have one side of it is dedicated to J.S. Bach, his music, his lifestyle, his very small bed, because of course people were much smaller in those days, and there are lots of harpsichords. And then the other side is actually dedicated to Jimi Hendrix works and some of his lifestyle, and it's really a really interesting sort of few hours out. And also you can play the harpsichords with permission, and you can, if you so wish, wear a wig. They have a dressing up box, because they do lots of school tours and things, and it's actually really interesting. But if you've never played a harpsichord, go and play one. you'll find it really, really different. Now, harpsichord technique is really different to a piano technique, and that's another story, but to be tackled on another day. But it's really good, even if you can't get to do something like that, if you're not near London, if you don't have any harpsichords near you, listen to some online. Really great. I think you can still hear her on YouTube. A really great harpsichord player was Virginia Black. You have also got Mahan Estefani, great harpsichord player. Oh gosh, so many, too many to mention, but there's a couple of suggestions for you there. If you want to listen to pianists playing Bach on the piano, which is obviously, you know, there's this argument, if Bach had a grand piano and all the things it's capable of, how would he play differently? And people have various different takes on that. So there are the purists that believe Bach should only be played on a period instrument. And then there are other pianists who believe, no, actually, Bach would have played it like this. This is where the artistic license comes in. And of course, if you are a well-known artist, well-respected artist, you have the freedom to do this. People can either listen and like it or not. Now, some of my favourites and some of the kind of more Bach specialists are, of course, you've got Saran Andras Schiff, who's very well known for all his playing, but for his Bach playing, he's particularly associated with Bach. You have Angela Hewitt, who again is very much associated with Bach, and her Bach playing is wonderful. You have, of course, the very controversial Glenn Gould, who liked to sit very low in his chair and with his arms sort of up here. Very unique style, very much like Marmite for people who love Bach. They either love his playing or can't bear his playing. It's really interesting to listen to. Even if you don't like what you hear, the perspective, that listening to what he's heard in it, all of these things inform you. And last, well, not last because there were so many, but I've just listed these few people. My absolute favourite for Bach, my own personal favourite, is Mario Pariah. I absolutely adore his Bach playing. He has, for me, and this is just my opinion, and we all have our opinions, but for me, he has a way of making Bach sound the way you might imagine Bach would want to sound on a piano, but without overly romanticizing it. But some of Bach's music is it's deeply spiritual, and some of it can sound really quite romantic. We have to be careful there, and this is where the stylistic awareness comes in. We have to be careful to not overdo things. So listening around what you're going to play, listening to strings, harpsichord, chamber music, violin, violin is a string, but you know, on its own, violin sonatas, rather, just listen to lots of Bach. And if you are listening to piano solo or harpsichord, try those people that I've mentioned. I have obviously many years of listening, and these are some of my favourites. And I will share, I'm not a huge fan of Glenn Gould at all, but I think it's very, very important to listen to as many different interpretations as you can. This is what helps you to understand what you want to do and what you don't want to do. It's not about copying. It's not about copying at all. This is about finding your own independent artistic voice, but making sure you are still playing with stylistic intentions that are appropriate to that style and era and instrument. So this is just such an exciting journey, and they are just a few suggestions for the beginning and the very first step in the Bach repertoire. I will have different suggestions every day for quite some time, because we are going to be going into so many dipping into different composers, different styles. So, if you have any comments, questions, please do drop them into the comments or over onto the community, and I'll be really happy to answer in any way I can or engage in a discussion with you if you're interested in doing that, because for me this is all part of a wonderful learning journey, and talking to other people about their experiences and their thoughts is very informative and very interesting, whatever stage we're at.